Hey guys, tonight we begin with the remarkable patience, skill, and let's say stubborn precision of the Viking shipbuilders, those who somehow shaped seaworthy vessels from raw oak and frozen earth without power tools or blueprints. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. The sea is a dark mirror tonight, stretching calm and endless beneath a sky powdered with starlight. And somewhere far away, a lone gull cries once before settling onto the glassy water. Listen to that hush, the faint, patient wash of tiny waves lapping against a weather-worn pier, the creak of ropes that have known 1,000 dawns, the slow breath of the northern wind sliding through pine. In that hush, we drift backward more than 1,000 winters, until the coastline changes and the pier becomes a sloped shingle beach crowded by low turf-roofed houses. Lantern flame glows in slit windows, painting shy runes of gold on the fresh snow, and an odor of peat smoke and simmering barley porridge curls into the cold night air. Within the longhouse nearest the water, the village heart beats steady. One broad stone hearth at the center, embers pulsing red, casting sleepy shadows over benches lined with fur and straw. A wooden cradle rocks to the hushed thump of a mother's foot. A young boy presses his palm to the cradle's side, whispering a half-remembered saga while his grandfather squats nearby, shaping a toy boat with knife strokes so measured the blade clicks like a clock. Around them, neighbors repair nets whose thin fibers gleam where new flax has been spliced among the old. Others twist cordage from bast under their thumbs until it is strong enough to bind the next year's oars. Nothing is hurried, nothing is wasted. Everything folds into quiet industry the way snow folds into the hollows of the surrounding hills. Nights are long enough in this season that one can forget the taste of sunlight. But inside the hall, time is braided around purpose. A girl too young for the loom still helps her mother tease lanolin from raw fleece. Tiny fingers slick with oil. She giggles each time the resinous scent of pine tar sneaks in when someone opens the door to fetch more firewood. By the forge, little more than a clay-ringed pit at the far end of the building, a smith crouches, coaxing fresh charcoal to life with deliberate breaths. His iron tongs grip a nugget of bog ore he dug from the frozen marsh in autumn. Now he will coax metal from dirt, the ember flare lighting his beard from below so that he resembles the dwarves of bedtime tales. Another man sits cross-legged by the hearth, sharpening the broad-bearded axe that will soon taste oak. Morning light arrives one day as something more than a ghost. It scatters pale gold across the packed snow lane, and ravens gossip in the larch trees. The village gathers under that milky sky, their breath rising in unison. For today, the craft foreman will choose the oak that will become the new ship. Axes gleam, sleigh runners receive a last wipe of tallow. Before leaving, one of the elders dips a bundle of juniper in the hearth and swings fragrant smoke around each traveler's shoulders, a quiet blessing against mishap. The journey inland takes 2 dawns, over crusty drifts along frozen rivers, beneath spruce boughs heavy with icicles, past silent elks that watch from shadowed stands. They camp near a hot spring where steam feathers moonlight, sharing dried fish and a flask of birch sap ale, then rise before first light to resume the search. When at last they find their oak, standing on a stony ridge where the north wind has tempered every ring, it is hugged around with silence. Each man removes his mitten, lays a bare hand to the bark, absorbing the tree's cool patience. The first axe bite is slow and ceremonial. Then steady blows follow, the rhythm deep and resonant, sending wood chips pattering onto snow like rain on a turned shield. The trunk trembles, groans, and settles onto waiting spruce boughs with a sigh that stirs the air like a released breath. A life surrendered so that many others may travel safely. Returning, they lash the massive log onto a pine bark sled. Ponies strain, hooves thudding, nostrils pluming white. Children run alongside when the procession reaches the village lane, marveling at the tree's girth, smelling the sap already crystallizing along the cut. The log is raised onto stout trestles beside the shore, precisely where tide will one day lap against hull. The master shipwright, gray braided hair beneath a felt cap, walks the length of the oak, knocking, listening. He chisels two shallow grooves that trace the natural curve he sees hidden within, then marks a long taper toward what will be the stern post. Broad axes follow, shaving golden slivers that pile ankle-deep before being gathered to feed the bathhouse stove. The keel emerges slowly, like a whale surfacing. Each line trued not with measuring tools, but with eyes tutored by decades of storms. When the spine is ready, it rests proudly atop forked supports, pointing seaward even before a single plank is fixed. Planking begins as spring pushes green flame through the hazel hedges. Young pines, felled earlier, are split along the grain with wooden wedges, rendering long staves as light as they are strong. These are planed smooth on inner faces and left rough on outer faces to drink tar better. The hull will be clinker-built. The bottommost board, shirt-broad and gently arched, is fastened to the keel with iron nails driven from outside and clenched over square roves within. A boy with quick hands minds the small anvil where each glowing rivet is upset, flipping the rove, tapping it home in 3 deft strikes. Above that garboard, a second plank overlaps, its lower edge shaved thin so the lap lies tight. The sequence continues upward until side rises from keel like a lily from pond water. With every plank, the shape lengthens, lean and subtle, designed to slice waves rather than shoulder them aside. Between each lap, a narrow strip of wool, soaked in sheep's tallow and pine tar, is tucked to seal against seepage. Even before ribs are added, the shell holds its form, a miracle of tension and flexible strength that southern shipwrights would call witchcraft. While carpenters labor, the forge rings day and night. Bog iron, once spongy nodules, now yields thin rectangular nails. The smith judges temperature by color alone, dull red for shaping, bright orange for quenching. He sprinkles salt on the coals to coax a bluer flame, humming a tune only he seems to know. Nearby, 2 apprentices hammer out the collar for the steering oar. It must pivot smoothly, yet never crack, and so they alternate between forging and cooling, until the iron sings beneath hammer-kissed blows. All the while, an elder woman arrives with a pot of honeyed mead, insisting the smith sip lest he forget that iron and hunger make poor companions. Across the lane stands the loom house, its doorway hung with wind bells made from hollow bird bones. Within, the air smells of lanolin and lye. 3 upright looms fill the narrow space, weighted by smooth stones carved with spiral designs older than any written alphabet. Women tread barefoot on oak slats polished by generations, their arms weaving weft through warp and strokes, so even that yarn whispers more than it rustles. The sail they create will be half again as tall as the tallest man and nearly square, woven in bands of undyed cream alternating with subtle gray. Between each color shift, they interlock threads to prevent fraying on violent gusts. When the bolt is finished, it is soaked in fermented cow's urine, pounded with ash bark, rinsed in seawater, then smeared with sheep tallow and ochre, which together repel both rot and harsh sun. Children thread small wooden beads onto the sail's corner cords, not for strength, but because beads clack gently in wind, a lullaby for rowers in the dark before dawn. As days lengthen, life around the build flourishes. Goats kid, calves stumble under mild skies, willow catkins burst silver. Farmers sow barley and flax, pausing at midday to watch progress on the boat. Fishermen mend traps, then wade into still-cold shallows to spread nets glinting like spider silk. Each evening, after chores, the village reunites near the ship, where pine torches flare amber against growing dusk. Someone brings a bowed lyre, plucking slow minor notes that seem to echo off water and stars alike. Another recites half-sung verses about Njord granting safe harbors. A third recounts the Jarl's new alliance with traders from the east. In this mingled glow of flame, music, and salt air, the rising hull acquires spirit, an invisible momentum driven by collective breath and intention. Ribs are steamed in a trough built from split spruce logs sealed with pitch. Stones heated white in a bonfire drop hiss-crack into the water, raising vapor clouds that shimmer like ghosts under torchlight. Green oak branches soak until ripe for bending. Then 2 men and a woman carry each sizzling length inside the shell, pressing it against planks while wedges and tree nails hold the curve. When morning light sweeps across the yard, a skeleton has formed inside the wooden skin, a lattice that will hum quietly when the hull meets rolling surf. The mast step is carved from a curved knee of oak rescued from a storm-felled giant. Beneath it, the youngest child in the village places a single raven feather and a scrap of amber wrapped in deerskin, tokens meant to guide the ship's spirit and lure fortune. Summer arrives on the heels of the last rib. Meadows turn to honey with blooming clover. Bees thrum. Distant waterfalls lose their icy roar and sing fuller, friendlier songs. Blades of ash are shaped into oars. Long, slender, with spoon-shaped tips feathered so finely they slice water rather than slap it. Each oar is branded near the grip with a mark. A stylized fish, a pine cone, a crescent moon. Symbols by which rowers will know their station. Leather thongs lash rowlocks to gunnels. Atop the stem post, a figurehead emerges under carver's slow chisel. Not a dragon, but a sleek seahorse, its mane curling backward into stylized wave crests, eyes inlaid with polished jet. To those on distant shores, that gaze will promise either trade or storm, depending how their hearts read it. Launch day dawns cloudless, the air already warm enough to carry the smell of sweetgrass inland. Villagers dress in their best. Tunics dyed with madder root, cloaks trimmed in squirrel fur saved for this moment. Brooches polished bright. A low table on the beach bears offerings, smoked salmon, wild strawberries, a pitcher of mead infused with juniper. A white goat, ears twitching, stands calmly beside a red-cloaked priest, whose face betrays sorrow for what comes. When tide is highest, a conch horn moans across the water. Every hand, small and large, closes on the tar-black hull. First sway, then slide. Pebbles crackle, sand hisses, water welcomes. The goat's quick sacrifice stains the prow, crimson swirling away beneath the keel. A hush grips the watchers as the ship settles, rocking gently, as if testing its limbs, before sitting proud on the shimmering green. Rowers board one by one, each whispering something to the deckboards. A prayer, a promise, a name. The helmsman, broad-shouldered, silver-voiced, steps last, laying fingers on the steering oar collar as though greeting an old friend. A drum beats twice, and oars dip in perfect cadence, feathering water into quicksilver ripples. Wool sail unfurls, catching a shy breeze that billows cloth and, there, lifts the vessel forward so smoothly the prow seems pulled by invisible thread. Cheers break the silence, but soon the ship rounds the headland and applause fades, replaced by gull cries and creaking timbers eager for distance. Along the coast they train, venturing first to neighboring bays where seals flop lazily across kelp beds, then daring the open Skagerrak when summer days stretch nearly into each other, spray mists faces warmed by sun, salt cakes beards and braids alike. On calm evenings, the crew rests oars and drifts, letting the hull whisper over mirrored water. They speak of cargo they hope to carry, of silver coins stamped with far-off caliphs, of honey cakes rumored in Saxon markets, of soft wool cloaks woven by Irish monks. Sometimes they grow silent and sleep where they sit, rocked by endless easy swell, the sail above them a pale tent stitched to the sky. Midsummer's height brings a voyage south, a trading foray meant to test ship and spirits alike. They skirt the Jutland Peninsula, catching coastal thermals that flutter sail seams and carry the scent of heather so vivid it lingers on the tongue. At night, phosphorescent plankton ignite beneath the hull. Each oar stroke trails ribbons of cold green fire. A seal's sleek head surfaces, curious, then dips just as silent. Stars triple in number as sky darkens into fathomless blue. Under that firmament, the steersman counts constellations, adjusting course by the spiral dance of the Wain. Days later, they nose into England's Humber estuary, a broad brown artery lined with reed beds alive with lark song. The hull's shallow draft lets them glide farther upriver than any foreign merchant dares follow. They tie off to a willow root and spend 2 tides trading. Amber teardrops for glass beads, bog iron axe heads for coarse salt, walrus ivory for honeyed mead that drips like captured sunset. No coin is refused, no craft dismissed, yet every barter ends with clasped wrists and shared flatbread sprinkled with cumin. Gestures older than language, older even than the dream of kings. From river to sea again, they press westward, tempted by promise beyond horizon. Shetland emerges as gray cliffs mottled with nesting puffins. Faroe greets them with meadows so green it stuns, waterfalls plunging straight into surf. Iceland rises next, a smoking, cracking newborn world where geysers roar and basalt columns march into mist. There they shelter for winter among turf-built booths, patching sailcloth with sinew, boiling whale blubber down to lamp oil, singing long, slow laments that swirl with snow into the black velvet dark. When northern lights ignite, fine curtains of jade and violet ripple across the vault, casting moving shadows that dance over sleeping faces. Spring returns like a drawn blade, sudden and bright. Sunlight floods the fjords, ice cracks like thunder, and seabirds scream their delight. Finally, a dawn arrives, smelling unfamiliar, earthy, loamy, tinged with berries. Landfall shows rounded hills draped in maple and larch, rivers rich with salmon leaping silver arcs. They camp near a beach strewn with pale stones, carving runes to mark arrival in this Vinland, this wineland, this place of possibility. There they harvest timber straighter than any at home, gather grapes into baskets plaited from willow, record the songs of strange birds that warble like flutes. Yet the sea is both road and tether. By autumn, the prow turns east. Gales gnash, but the hull flexes, lapstrake seams shrugging off hammering crests. One night, a rogue wave lifts the stern clear of water, slams it down. Mast groans, sail splits along a seam, but quick hands reef cloth and lash a spare spar across the tear. They ride the storm like a dance partner, yielding, leaning, never resisting outright. Dawn breaks calm and lavender. Dolphins escort the battered yet unbroken ship toward sunrise. Months later, they appear once more off their home headland, sail patched with differing colors that tell tales before tongues do. Villagers rush waist-deep into surf, laughing, weeping, tasting salt that is part sea, part tears. Cargo spills onto shore, seal pelts supple as smoke, grains of red sand that sparkle like embers, a maple wood chest holding seeds of plants unseen in northern soil. In the hall that night, the fire roars higher than memory. Tales unspool, of cliffs swarming with puffins, of icebergs glowing blue beneath polar moon, of forests where leaves the size of a man's hand flutter in winds, scented with something like apple blossom and something like promise. When feasting ebbs and shadows grow long, the shipwright's apprentice slips outside alone. He runs a palm along the hull he helped birth from oak and iron and dream. Tar still smells faintly of summer sun. Planks still hum when breeze moves between them. Sea purls in the darkness, cradling the prow like a mother rocking a child. He listens. Heartbeats, tide beats, hoof beats of memory. Then he turns toward the longhouse where the hearth waits, where nieces and nephews already drowse behind sealskin curtains. Boots crunch on frost-kissed grass. Behind him, the ship rocks once, twice, then settles, as if exhaling. The wind gentles to a sigh, and northern stars step into their ancient dance overhead, guiding sailors and sleepers alike into the quiet of another night. Winter gathers its gray cloak early in the north, stiffening every rope and plank. In the pre-dawn hush, shipwrights wrap themselves in layered wool tunics, waxed linen underclothes, and cloaks trimmed with fox or hare. Even children know to tuck dried grass inside sealskin shoes so body heat does not bleed into the snow. A slave lad sprinkles sand on the frozen yard, so iron nails dropped from numb fingers can still be found when sun finally climbs. A thrifty habit learned the hard way. The cold gnaws like. Inside the longhouse, the cold is held at arm's length, not banished. Peat embers banked under a stone slab glow wine red. Fresh birch chips hiss when the hearth is coaxed to life. Smoke hunts its way through a vent cut low in the turf roof before curling beneath rafters scented with last summer's heather. Sleeping benches are lined with straw and shaggy sheepskins. Above each bed, a wooden peg holds a personal pouch of dried juniper, thought to scare fever spirits. Walls 3 arms thick, turf outside, gravel and timber within, muffle wind but hold the cold like a memory. Breakfast is a silent ritual of survival. Stone-milled barley porridge stirred with goat milk and thickened by scraps of yesterday's dried fish. A dollop of chilled skyr adds tang. Honey is rare, traded in tiny clay pots, so children crush frozen lingonberries for sweetness instead. The forge master chews a strip of smoked puffin to warm his jaw before the anvil rings. High protein and fat keep muscles supple through the white months. Midwinter daylight is a pale suggestion. Work continues by torch and tallow lamp. 2 men rasp oak ribs inside the hull while a woman taps iron rivets glowing sunset orange. The smell of hot metal and pine tar mingling in brittle air. Outside, apprentices split driftwood for charcoal. Sparks crack sideways in the frost, each one a reminder that warmth is earned blow by blow. Midday meal arrives in wooden trenchers. Salted lamb stew thick with kale and onions cellared since autumn, chased by cups of ale brewed weak enough for children. Brewing keeps water safe when the spring well ices over. On feast days, a single silver coin buys imported cumin to dust the stew. Its peppery ghost tastes of distant sun and underscores the shipyard's link to markets hundreds of sea miles away. When the north wind howls through the beams, the yard shifts indoors. Women full sails in warm urine and ash lie, pounding cloth with birch mallets until fibers bloom felt tight. The ammonia stings eyes, but a porous sail could sink fortunes. Near them, 2 lads twist walrus hide into whipcord to bind oar leather. The ivory tusks that paid for the hide traveled down from Arctic hunters and across a dozen hands before reaching this bench. Evenings belong to accounts. By horn lamp, a foreman weighs hacksilver on a folding bronze scale, its arms etched with runes. A thumb-sized ingot equals 3 weeks of a smith's labor. A clipped Durham coin from far Arabia buys 10 ells of wadmal cloth or 4 nursing goats, depending on the season's scarcity. Bargains settle in low voices, yet every child listens. Economy is saga in numbers, the village's pulse rendered in molten metal. The cold itself is weapon and teacher. Ice crust on the fjord lets crews drag hull supports nearer the slipway, shaving hours come launch day. Boys test bronze adzes on frozen spruce, learning grain and rebound before real planks are risked. At night, older men carve sloyd knives by lamplight. Bone handles scrimshawed with knotwork hinting at snakes and surf. Memorized art to warm stiff fingers. Come thaw moon, smokehouses billow. Haddock strung over alder fires turns golden. Oily tears dripping into birch bark gutters later rendered as lamp fuel. Fermented shark, buried all winter in a gravel pit, emerges sharp enough to sting nostrils. 1 cube swallowed ensures respect for sea spirits and clears a cough. Cod liver oil mixed with rowan berry mash is spooned into toddlers, a hedge against rickets the gods never named yet mothers fear. With ice retreating, builders harvest spruce roots for lashings. Roots soak in a steaming trough, then twist pliant as rope around keelson beams. Iron is dear, but roots grown by fjord water cost only patience. Elder women recite harvest omens, pluck toward sun for strength, cut on waning moon for flexibility. Such subtleties travel mouth to ear, never rune-carved, because living knowledge resists nails as fiercely as green oak does. Housing expands too. New turf huts rise near the slip for journeymen hired from inland valleys. Rent is paid in labor and a share of next summer's catch. Coins rarely pass in these contracts, but reputation weighs more than stamped silver. Stone floors slope slightly to a center gutter where meltwater can drain. Low doorways force every guest to bow, honoring hearth before host by design, not courtesy. Work rhythms mirror daylight's slow return. First bell. Sharpen adzes, plain sapwood from green planks. Second bell. Hoist steam-softened ribs and wedge with oak tree nails. Third bell. Break for dried whale strips and barley flatbread. A juggler's precision governs every swing. Clumsy cuts waste iron fasteners that cost half a month's walrus hide revenue. Yet by dusk, the hull rises another handspan. A wooden tide no moon commands. Markets resume when rivers thaw. Traders beach shallow draft vessels beside the pier, laying out glass beads, Frankish swords, and squirrel pelts. Our master shipwright barters a single clinker strake, perfectly curved, sapwood shorn, for a clutch of Byzantine silk ribbons. He'll sew them inside his wife's cloak where only she will see, proof that beauty need not shout to be remembered. Village law thing meets each new moon. Disputes settle near the half-built ship so all may witness judgment. A farmer who felled a mast pine without leave weighs out 6 ounces of silver, handing over hacked bracelets measured on a stone scale. The shipyard claims half as restitution, the gods the rest via a feast for the poor. In this way, wood, metal, and conscience braid into communal lumber. When summer at last yawns warm and wide, the expanded workforce swells the soundscape. Rhythm of sawing, the hiss of pitch, children splashing nets for fry. Goats fatten on roof grass. Their milk churns into butter stored in birch bark boxes, vital calories for the long trial voyages ahead. By twilight, voices drift over water like lantern light, soft, overlapping, bound together by promise as strong as any iron rivet.